If you follow this formula, I promise this is going to set you up for the best possible chance of success when trying to start your first profitable business. The first thing you should do when planning to start your first business is to commit to making an MVP, or a minimum viable product of your business, and not try to make something like commercially scalable on day one. An MVP comes from the book The Lean Startup, and it's essentially the most basic version of your product or service that your customers would accept from you. And if you build anything fancier than an MVP, you're really just guessing. A perfect example of this is actually the first company that I ever started. It's right here. It's called Big Bear Barbecue Sauce. And this happened like a decade ago. And in fact, this bottle of barbecue sauce is 9 years expired. So I shouldn't even be like touching it, because who knows what's growing in there, even on the other side of the glass. But I completely skipped over the MVP phase and went straight to commercial production. And I'll give you a second to guess. I don't know, take a guess. How many bottles did I make of this? Go ahead and throw out a number. Keep going up, keep going up, keep going up. I ordered 2,400 bottles of this barbecue sauce as my first business. That's a horrible idea. An MVP version of this would have been putting it in some mason jars and seeing if my neighbors would even buy it in the first place before I committed to it. I didn't know if I could make money doing this. I didn't know if I liked selling barbecue sauce. I didn't know if anyone even liked the product. I completely skipped over MVP, and that is a portion of why that company failed. So definitely don't skip this part. Step 2 is to choose a basic product or service for your first business. There are pros and cons to each, but sticking with a product or service business is usually a lot quicker to monetize than things like an app or a blog or a YouTube channel. Now, it's really important that this product or service checks at least one of these boxes, and ideally both of these boxes. It should be 1, something you're passionate about or pretty interested in, and 2, something that solves a pain point that people have. Because if you aren't interested in it, you're probably not going to stick with the business long enough to ever see it through to success. And if your product or service doesn't solve a pain point in someone's life, basically does it solve a problem someone is having, it's probably not going to grow as fast because people don't have as much of a reason to buy from you in the first place. Step 3 is to find examples of other people successfully doing the thing that you want to do. So that way you have someone to model, not really copy, but just model after. It's kind of like following a recipe from a cookbook at first, since you know it has good outcomes. And over time, you can get more creative with it and take some risks, but at first you want to follow a proven method. If you can't find anybody doing the business that you want to do, I would really try to stay away from that. At least for your first company, that would be a red flag for me, because that really means one of two things. Either A, nobody wants to buy that thing, or B, like maybe some people want to buy it, but it's not big enough to support a viable company. And that's why you can't find any competitors, because they've already tried it and they've already gone under. And you don't want to be the next in line to have that happen to you. So if you see competitors, I would see that as a good thing. Don't think, oh man, someone's already doing this. Think, oh man, someone's already doing this. That's great. That means there's proven demand, and it means I have a chance of making a real business out of this. Step 4 is one of the most important of all. You want to ensure that your business model is profitable before you ever start. In other words, you want to make sure that you can sell your product or service for more than it costs you to make or deliver it, with enough margin left over to pay yourself a reasonable wage. At a minimum, you want to be able to charge at least 2 to 3 times more than the product or service costs you, and ideally more. It's why clothes manufacturers have to charge like $98 for what you know is a $2 shirt. There are a lot of expenses along the way to where they need to charge that much to support the operations and growth of the business and still turn a profit. So many people skip this step. They just think, well, I can make cookies and I can sell cookies, and that's about as much thought as I put into it. But they don't do the math to say, how many cookies would I actually have to sell, it could be cookies or whatever, to make $1,000 a month? And then furthermore, how many hours is that going to require of me to make that $1,000? I might be making like 50 cents an hour. And if I don't do the math ahead of time to figure that out, I'm really just set up for a bad situation. So to do this, you take your sales price of one product or one service, subtract out the amount of money it costs you to make that product or perform that service, and that equals what's called your gross profit. You divide that number by how many hours it took you to do all of that, and there is your hourly wage. Now keep in mind, this is before you add any overhead expenses, which are basically just expenses that occur regardless of whether or not you sell anything. So like your website expense or any other recurring fees that would occur whether or not you sell anything. Since small new startups typically don't have very much overhead or any to start with, using your gross profit divided by the hours it took you to create that gross profit is a pretty good indication of your hourly wage. So for example, I was selling Big Bear barbecue sauce for $5 a bottle, and it cost me $2.52 to make it. That meant I was making $2.48 in gross profit before any overhead. So in order to pay myself, $1,000 a month, for example, I would need to sell about 400 per month. And at best, I was selling like maybe 100 per month. And that took many hours of my work to find those customers and ship it to them and all that. So I was pulling in about $200 of profit per month maximum, but I was spending like 20 hours on it, which comes out to $10 an hour. So you can see how doing the math ahead of time on this situation would have led me down to architecting this business a little differently so that I was set up for more success. Because at that scale, it just wasn't worth the time I was spending on it. And had I known that in advance, I would have done things differently. Once you've designed a business that can work on paper, step 5 is to make a list of everyone you think that would buy it and then run a survey through Google Surveys, which is free. You can attach a 60-second video from your phone on there explaining the business concept you want to make and then ask these questions in the survey. Number 1, pretend it wasn't me selling this. Is this still something you would buy? Yes or no? Question 2, what is the reason you would or wouldn't buy this? Question 3, what is the most you would pay for this? And question 4, any suggestions or things I should add or remove to this product or service? And then you should send this survey to everyone, and I mean everyone that you can think of, everyone that your parents can think of, everyone that your cousin can think of, everyone that your best friend can think of, and then ask them to send that out to all of their friends as a favor to you. And if you do this and you really push hard to get as many responses as possible, I'll bet you could get well over 100 responses. And the best part of this is not only you can have a lot of information to work off of, this is really good market research, but best of all, of the people that are interested in your product, you now have your first customer list. So if you think you have enough interest worth starting your business on, then go build your MVP, your minimum viable product. But this is gonna be unique to each business. So for example, if you survey 100 people, but only 2 people say, yes, I would hire you as a babysitter, and the other 98 just don't have kids worth babysitting, that's probably still a good reason to go ahead and start a babysitting company, because you can make good money, babysitting for 2 families every month. Whereas if you survey 100 people, but only 2 of them like your homemade popsicle stick art, that's not enough for a viable business. So you really just have to use your discretion. So step 6 is to launch your MVP, and launching can be simple. Just do these 4 things. Number 1 is to choose a name for your business, and you don't even necessarily need a logo to start out with. It can literally just be your business name in a fun font. Remember, this is an MVP. This is a minimum viable product, so don't waste any money having a logo designed. Step 2 is to build a way for people to place orders and for you to keep track of your customers. Now, eventually this could be a sophisticated e-commerce platform like Shopify, but for starters, this could literally be a Google form. It doesn't even have to accept credit cards, and it doesn't have to be complicated. Just start with something free. Number 3 is to set up a way for people to contact you related to your business. Now, I'd shy away from just using your phone and just saying, hey, text me, because that's going to become unruly at a certain point. You're going to have so many text messages, it's going to be easy to get things lost. I also probably wouldn't just say, hey, we operate everything through Instagram or TikTok or whatever. You can place your orders through DMs there, because the problem is not everyone's going to have that type of social media profile. All your friends might, but all your prospective customers might not. So instead, I would recommend setting up a free Gmail account. It could be your business name at gmail.com. It's free and everybody has email. That's going to be a really reliable way for people to contact you, and you're going to have a really good paper trail on those communications. Step number 4 is to officially launch, and you can do that through taking the list of people that you surveyed previously and send them the place where they can place orders. And I would also consider doing some sort of limited time order window or a limited run of inventory or limited number of service appointments. Basically, find some way to put some scarcity on it so that way they're incentivized to act now. Don't wait till next week. You need to act now. Plus, that way you can build up some excitement for the next time you make some inventory. You can say things like, hey, we sold out in the first day last time, so you'll want to get your order in early. Now, also, if you don't want to spend the money up front to create the product before you sell it, you can instead just do a pre-order. So it's the same launch technique. You're just doing a pre-order and collecting the money for a limited amount of time as a way to raise the money you need to then go create your product. So don't let money be the reason that you don't launch your business. Step 7 is to go focus the majority of your time trying to make sales. Don't succumb to the build it and they will come mentality. Basically, as business owners, we think that our business is the greatest thing that the world has ever seen, and we just assume that everyone else will feel that way too. That's what happened with Big Bear. I thought, man, everyone will know that Big Bear exists. It's delicious. Why wouldn't they come buy it? And you sit back and you wait for sales to come in, and they won't. So you really have to prioritize and focus on making sales. And there's two things I want to emphasize here. First is that once you have customers, I would focus the majority of your sales effort trying to make more sales to that same customer base. Try to get repeat orders, because it's going to be a lot easier to do that than to go find new customers that don't know anything about you and they haven't used your product or service yet. It's really more difficult to do that than it is to just make sales to the existing people over and over and over. And if you're thinking, well, yeah, that's great, but I don't really have a product or service that's meant to be purchased more than once, I would just challenge your thinking a little bit and say, well, yeah, but is there an adaptation of my business I can make to really unlock this for me? So for example, if you're making custom bird feeders and you're saying, yeah, people probably just buy one bird feeder from me. Yes, but could you then upsell a service to come by and fill up their bird feeders with birdseed once a week or once a month? That way you get some recurring sales out of it. Or if you have a reusable gift bag company, can you make a seasonal or holiday variant of your designs that people will want to buy from time to time throughout the year? Find a way to try to sell to people more than once. Secondly, I would really try to focus on marketing initiatives that involve getting directly in front of customers, directly contacting customers instead of indirectly contacting them, like putting out content that you hope people might see one day and they may or may not see it and they may or may not actually come purchase from you. There's kind of a direct and an indirect approach. So for example, lean towards contacting people directly, asking for referrals, setting up a booth at the farmer's market. You get the idea. Get right in front of people to the best of your ability instead of just posting blog posts or social media posts. Hey Charlie, isn't social media posting getting directly in front of people? And the answer is, well, not always, because not everyone's going to see every post you make either. They're not even on the platform to begin with. They don't follow you. The algorithm doesn't push it in front of them. They just weren't on that time of day and didn't see your post. Lots of reasons they're not going to see you. And so it's easy to think, man, I've got a lot of followers and I'm doing a lot of posting that might not actually generate results. And so again, in the early days, I'd find the most ways as possible to try to get directly in front of people and directly contact them. Now, the steps listed in this video are the pillars for getting started, but there's so much more to know. And so to help with that, we at Boss Club have put together a course with over 140 videos walking you step by step through the entire business startup process. And we have started dozens of businesses ourselves. And so we've distilled down everything we've learned into a repeatable process that you can follow to launch a profitable company. And by going through our course, I promise you will greatly increase the chances that you'll turn a profit on your first company. I know that if I had this course before I started Big Bear, it would have changed my story dramatically. And I'm so excited for you to check out the course. Just like how whenever you're learning a new instrument or you're wanting to learn a new sport, you don't just DIY that approach. You don't just Google around articles and say, how do I become a really good soccer player? No, you join a team. You hire a coach, you hire a tutor, you join the school band, you find people that have done the thing that you're wanting to do and you say, hey, teach me how to do this. And that's what we are about at Boss Club. We have helped literally thousands of students all across the US start their first business, and now it's your turn. And I can't wait to see you on the inside.